My family thought my life's purpose was to be their safety net. They believed my hard-earned success was a communal resource they could tap at will. They sat me down for a family dinner to demand I sign away my financial future for my nephew. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to make sure they could never ask me, or anyone else, for anything ever again. This is a story about drawing a line in the sand with the people who are supposed to love you most. If you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own family, you're in the right place. Make sure you're subscribed for more stories of sweet justice. The maple wood tabletop of my parents' kitchen table was a map of my childhood. And tonight, I felt like a stranger navigating a hostile land. I could trace the 15 years I'd spent doing homework right here by the faint, overlapping circles where dinner plates had been set down night after night. A ghostly record of family meals. Tonight, one of those worn spots was directly under my own plate, the good china, with its delicate gold rim that Mom insisted was too fragile for anything but holidays. The weight of the sterling silver fork in my hand felt wrong, too heavy and ornate for a simple Tuesday. It was an implement for a performance, not a meal. My mom, Susan, bustled around the stove. Her movements a little too bright, a little too cheerful. A flurry of fabricated warmth. She kept glancing over at my dad, Robert, who was pouring wine with a solemn generosity that was usually reserved for Christmas Eve toasts. He filled my glass until the deep red liquid nearly crested the rim, a gesture so out of character for his usually frugal nature that it sent a small, cold signal of alarm through me. He then did the same for my brother Tyler and his wife, Jessica, before finally filling his own. The neck of the expensive Cabernet bottle clinked softly against the crystal. One of the few sounds in a room thick with unspoken intentions. More mashed potatoes? Catherine, Mom asked. Her voice pitched a half octave too high, a telltale sign of her anxiety. I managed a small, tight smile and shook my head. I'm good. Mom, it's delicious. Though, she ignored my refusal, as I knew she would. It was a classic move in her playbook, feign concern while overriding my choice. She dropped another heavy, creamy spoonful onto Tyler's plate. He didn't even look up from his phone, his thumb swiping in a steady, rhythmic trance. He was present physically, but his attention was a million miles away. Beside him, Jessica was a portrait of quiet tension, meticulously cutting a piece of roast beef into tiny, manageable squares for their 8-year-old son, Mason. Her focus narrowed to the single, controllable task in front of her. The silence at the table wasn't comfortable or companionable. It was the heavy, loaded silence of a courtroom waiting for a verdict. It's just so wonderful, Mom finally said, breaking the quiet as she wiped her perfectly clean hands on the floral apron I'd given her 2 Christmases ago. To have the whole family together on a Tuesday night. It feels like such a real treat. I nodded and took a long sip of the wine. It was rich and complex, and I used the moment to fortify myself, trying to wash down the bitter taste of suspicion that was rising in my throat. This wasn't a treat. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a carefully staged event, an ambush. And I was the guest of honor and the intended target. I just didn't know the nature of the attack yet. The clues were scattered around the room like pieces of a puzzle I was reluctantly solving. Dad was wearing his gold retirement watch, a gaudy timepiece he only strapped on for weddings, funerals, and milestone anniversaries. Mom had on her pearl earrings, the ones that usually lived deep inside her jewelry box. Their creamy luster reserved for Christmas Mass or Easter brunch. They were playing the part of proud, benevolent parents from a 1,950-second sitcom, and I knew my role was to be the grateful, compliant daughter. A memory, sharp and unwelcome as a shard of glass, surfaced. I'm 16, standing alone in the cavernous, echoing auditorium of a rival high school. The air smells of industrial floor wax and the ghosts of 1,000 basketball games. The gold medal for first place in the state science fair feels impossibly heavy around my neck, cold against my skin. I'd spent 6 months on that project, sacrificing weekends and sleep, driven by a desperate need to achieve something so undeniable they would have to see me. I called them from a payphone in the lobby, my voice buzzing with an excitement so pure it felt like electricity. I won. Mom, I actually won. The scholarship. I got it. Oh, that's nice. Honey, she'd said, her voice a distant, static sound, distracted by the roar of a crowd in the background. That's wonderful. Listen, Tyler's game is going into overtime. It's a real nail-biter. We'll have to celebrate later. Can you make sure you put the casserole in the fridge when you get home? Don't let it spoil. Celebrate later. That later never came. A week later, I saw the pictures on her friend Brenda's social media feed. My parents, beaming on the bleachers under the harsh Friday night lights. They were wearing custom-made t-shirts, the kind you order online, with Tyler's Hashone fans printed on the back in huge, obnoxious block letters. He'd thrown a single decent pass that won a meaningless mid-season game. I had won a full-ride scholarship to the best engineering school in the state, securing my entire future. I remember walking to the grocery store that night and buying myself a single, sad-looking cupcake from the bakery case. I ate it in my car, the artificial sweetness coating my tongue. That was my celebration. Back at the dinner table, a loud clearing of my mother's throat ripped me from the memory. She folded her hands primly on the table, her meeting is now in session gesture. So, she began, her practiced smile unwavering. We wanted to get everyone together because there's something very important we need to discuss. It's about Mason and his future. My dad, Onque, slid a neat stack of papers across the polished table. They moved like a slow-motion predator, silent and deliberate, coming to a stop right next to my wine glass. On top was a loan application from the Downtown Credit Union, its logo a cheerful, wholesome green. My eyes scanned the page, my brain struggling to assemble the words and numbers into something that made sense. A $40,000 loan. A university trust fund for Mason. And there, already typed neatly into the box labeled co-signer, was my full legal name, Catherine Marie Parker. A block of ice formed in my stomach and spread through my veins. It wasn't a request. It was a foregone conclusion. It's just a formality. Cat, Tyler said, finally looking up from his phone. His expression a careful blend of nonchalance and brotherly affection. It was the smooth, practiced tone of a salesman who'd rehearsed his pitch in front of a mirror. With your credit score, it's a slam dunk. We just need your signature to lock in the good interest rate. For Mason, he added his son's name like a shield. A moral justification I couldn't possibly argue with. Mom reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Her skin was warm, but the gesture felt cold and strategic. You just got that big bonus at work. Honey, your father and I are so proud. And you know, family helps family. It's what we do. And there it was. The trap, sprung with chilling precision. The whole evening, the good china, the expensive wine, the fake smiles. In the talk of family, it was all a meticulously constructed stage. They had done their research. They had confirmed my financial status. They had prepared the paperwork. The realization dawned with a devastating clarity. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was a financial instrument. I was the family ATM. And they had just entered their PIN. Another memory. This one a sanctuary. Rose to meet the tide of bitterness. My grandma Rose. Sitting with me on her porch swing. The rusted chains creaking a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. I was 14. Complaining bitterly about how Tyler got a used car for his 16th birthday while I got a $50 savings bond that I couldn't touch for 10 years. She had taken my hand. Her skin thin and papery over strong, capable knuckles. Some people are born thinking the world owes them a living. Catesy, she'd said, her wise eyes fixed on the setting sun. And some people are born to build their own world. Brick by painful brick. Don't you ever get those two mixed up? This life is yours. You build it. You own it. Don't you ever let them make you forget that? Her voice echoed in my head now. A lighthouse in the suffocating fog of my family's expectations. My own student loans had been $60,000. I remembered the weight of that number. The sleepless nights. I paid every cent myself. Working thankless jobs through college waiting tables. Shelving books in the library. Transcribing medical records until my fingers went numb. No one had co-signed for me. When my first car broke down, a decade-old Civic that smelled of burnt oil. I took the bus for 6 months until I had saved enough to fix it. When Tyler wanted a new MacBook for college, they'd thrown him a huge going-away-to-school party. And his friends and relatives had showered him with cash. My going-away party was me. Alone. Packing 2 worn suitcases into my still unreliable car. Gently. I pulled my hand from my mother's grasp. I needed air. The room felt small. The walls closing in. Excuse me, I murmured, my voice sounding distant and hollow to my own ears. I just need to use the restroom. I walked down the familiar hallway. Each step an effort. The carpet, worn thin from years of foot traffic, seemed to clutch at my heels. In the small, peach-tiled bathroom, I gripped the edges of the porcelain sink until my knuckles turned white. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale. A stranger's face. My eyes wide with a mixture of shock and a deep, Anson hurt. But as I looked closer, I saw something else stirring in their depths. A flicker. It was a cold, hard anger. Crystallizing out of the pain. Grandma Rose was right. My life was mine. I had built it. And I would be damned if I let them use it as collateral for their favorite son. I splashed cold water on my face. The shock of it a welcome anchor. I took one deep, steadying breath. Then another. Then I walked back to the kitchen. I sat down and picked up my wine glass, taking a slow, deliberate sip. The performance was over. The air in the room had changed. The fake warmth had evaporated, replaced by a tense, impatient expectation. All eyes were on me. The paperwork looks very thorough, I said, my voice carefully neutral, betraying none of the storm raging inside me. This is a big decision. I'll need some time to look it over properly and think about it. Tyler leaned forward, his friendly mask completely gone now. Un impatient. Ugly frown creased his forehead. There's nothing to think about. Cat. It's standard stuff. We told you. The appointment at the bank is on Thursday morning at 10. We need it signed before then. The pressure was immense. a physical weight pressing down on me. My mother's smile was a tight, disparity line. My father stared at me, his jaw set, his expression one of stony disappointment. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. That night, sleep was a foreign country I couldn't reach. I tossed and turned in the cool silence of my own apartment, the scene from dinner replaying in my mind with excruciating clarity. The entitlement. The coordinated attack. The absolute certainty in their eyes that I would eventually cave. How did they know the exact amount of my bonus? I was private about my finances. I hadn't told anyone. An unsettling thought prompted me to grab my laptop from my bag. I logged into my company's employee portal, the secure system where our pay stubs and benefits information were stored. As the main page loaded, a small notification I usually ignored popped up in the corner of the screen. It was a security alert, flagged in red. My heart began to pound. A slow, heavy drum against my ribs. My mouth went dry. I clicked on it. The message was simple, clinical, and utterly terrifying. Your account was accessed by an unfamiliar IP address on Monday, September 1st, at 2:15 p.m. Yesterday afternoon, less than 3 hours before my mother had called, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, to invite me to this special family dinner. My blood ran cold, with hands that were now trembling so hard I could barely control the trackpad. I copied the string of numbers and pasted it into a free online IP lookup tool. The result loaded in seconds. A small map pinpointing a location in the familiar suburban sprawl just a few miles from my apartment. The name of the internet service provider was listed, along with the registered city. It was Comcast. It was my parents' provider. The IP address was coming from inside their house. The numbers on the screen seemed to glow in the darkness of my apartment. The room, which had always been my sanctuary, suddenly felt cold and exposed. A single, damning fact had crystallized out of the chaotic emotions of the evening. This wasn't just a desperate, clumsy attempt to get money. This was a premeditated operation. They had performed reconnaissance. They had gathered intelligence. Then, armed with the knowledge of my exact financial state, they had set the trap. It wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. The roast beef, the good china, my mother's anxious smile, it was all theater. My hands felt numb. I picked up my phone, my fingers moving with a strange, detached purpose. I scrolled through my contacts to Brenda, a friend from college who now worked as a senior network engineer. It was late, past 11. But I knew she was a night owl. I typed out a message, my thumb hovering over the send button. It felt like crossing a line, pulling an outsider into the toxic ecosystem of my family. But I had to be sure. I had to have irrefutable proof. I pressed send. Hey B. Weird question and sorry it's so late. Can you take a look at this IP for me? Is there any way to know for sure who it belongs to? I pasted the string of numbers. Her reply came back in less than a minute. That's weirdly specific. Everything okay? My fingers trembled as I typed. Long story. Just need to know if it's solid. The 3 little dots of her typing bubble appeared and disappeared for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the message came through. It's a dynamic IP from a residential Comcast account in Northwood. That much is certain. You can't get the exact street address without a subpoena. But I can tell you the node it's assigned to serves about a 2-block radius around Maple Street. Is that what you needed? Maple Street. My parents' street. My childhood street. I closed my eyes. A wave of nausea washing over me. Thanks. B. That's exactly what I needed. I didn't want to lie. But the truth was too heavy. Too ugly to share. My mind was racing now. Piecing things together. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had realized. It wasn't just about money. It was about a fundamental lack of respect. A violation of my privacy and my trust, fueled by a new, cold anger. I opened my messaging app. There it was, the Parker Family Fun group chat. I had muted it months ago. Tired of the endless stream of mundane updates about Tyler's life and the passive-aggressive memes my mother liked to post. It had been easier to ignore it than to face the inevitable drama that would come from leaving it. Now, I was grateful for my cowardice. I started scrolling up, my thumb flying across the screen, going back a week. And then I found it. The thread started with a link my father had sent. It was a local news article celebrating my company for securing a major new contract. Dad, Catherine's firm did well. She should be getting a decent bonus from this. Tyler, how decent are we talking? I need to know if it's enough. Mom, Tyler. Honey. Don't be crass. We'll find out. I have an idea. Robert. Do you remember Lisa from my book club? Her daughter works in Catherine's HR department. Maybe she could find out. Dad, no. Too risky. We can check the employee portal. I still remember the password she used for the old family computer. It's probably the same. Worth a shot. A screenshot followed a few hours later. It was a cropped image of my pay stub. The net amount of my bonus circled in red. I felt my breath catch in my chest. They had hacked into my private employee account. Tyler. Okay. That's enough. It's perfect. We can do this. Mom, remember the plan. I'll make the roast beef she loves. We need to make the whole evening feel special. So she doesn't suspect a thing. We all need to be on our best behavior. Tyler, don't worry. I'll lay it on thick about Mason's future. She's got a soft spot for him. She'll cave. She always does. I read the words over and over. Each one a separate stab wound. She always does. He was right. For 30 years, I had caved. I had smoothed things over. I had accepted the crumbs of their affection and pretended they were a feast. But the person who had walked into that house for dinner tonight was not the same person reading these messages. I meticulously took screenshots of the entire conversation. My movements precise and mechanical. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was evidence. The next morning, my phone rang as I was getting ready for work. It was Tyler. I let it go to voicemail. But he called back immediately. I knew he wouldn't stop. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello? Kat, I was starting to worry. You didn't answer. His voice was laced with that fake, cloying concern he used when he wanted something. I was in the shower. Tyler, what do you want? I just wanted to see how you were doing. Last night felt a little tense. I hope we didn't put too much pressure on you. I almost laughed. You think? Look. I get it. It's a lot of money. But this is for Mason. This is for his future. Don't you want to see him have all the opportunities we didn't? The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He had been given every opportunity, every advantage, and squandered them all. I just don't understand why you have to be so selfish about this. You're going to destroy my son's future over a piece of paper. I stayed silent, letting his words hang in the air. I could hear his breathing grow heavy with frustration. Are you even listening to me? This is what family does. We help each other. Or have you forgotten that now that you're making so much money? The dam of my composure finally broke. But it wasn't a flood of tears. It was a quiet, chilling calm. I haven't forgotten anything, Tyler. In fact, I'm remembering everything very clearly now. I hung up before he could respond. At work, I couldn't focus. The words from the group chat kept flashing in my mind. I must have looked as bad as I felt. Because around lunchtime, Margaret, a senior engineer from another department, stopped by my desk. She was in her late 50s. With kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude I'd always admired. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Catherine, she said softly, "Want to grab a coffee?" We sat in the sterile corporate break room, the air humming with the sound of the vending machines. I didn't know why, but I told her everything. The years of being overlooked, the dinner, the loan, the invasion of my privacy. I expected sympathy, maybe some gentle advice. What I got was a spine of pure steel. She listened intently, her expression hardening with every detail. When I finished, she stirred her coffee for a long moment before looking me straight in the eye. "Catherine," she said, her voice firm but kind. "I'm going to tell you something my mother told me. You can choose your friends, but you are not required to keep the family you were born into if they are poison. People who use love and loyalty as weapons don't deserve your sacrifice." Her words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Don't deserve your sacrifice. All my life, I had thought sacrifice was my duty. It was the price of admission to my own family. In that moment, sitting on a cheap plastic chair under flickering fluorescent lights, Margaret gave me something my own mother never had: permission. Permission to put myself first. I walked back to my desk feeling like a different person. The fog of guilt and obligation that had clouded my judgment for years was beginning to lift, and in its place was a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. Saying no wasn't enough. As long as I was within their reach, they would never stop. They would use guilt, shame, manipulation, anything in their arsenal to wear me down. The only way to win was not to play their game at all. I opened my laptop. I navigated to my personal files, to a folder I hadn't opened in months labeled Next Steps. Inside was a single PDF. A job posting for a project manager position at a tech firm in San Francisco. I had seen it 6 months ago and saved it. A daydream for a future that felt impossibly far away. Now, it felt like a lifeline. I opened my resume and began to edit. Each keystroke a small act of rebellion. I wasn't just updating my job history, I was writing my Declaration of Independence. Over the next few days, the pressure campaign escalated. Sunday morning, after I'd ignored 2 calls from my mother, I received a text from my Aunt Carol. "Catherine, your mother is worried sick. The ladies in my prayer group at church are all praying for you to find some grace in your heart and do the right thing for your family. Don't let pride harden your heart against your own parents." They were weaponizing God now. They were turning my reputation in our small community into another tool of manipulation. I felt a surge of hot shame, followed immediately by a wave of defiance. My heart wasn't hard, it was broken. And they were the ones who had broken it. The next evening, I came home from work to find a plain white envelope slid under my apartment door. There was no stamp, no address. My name was written on the front in a shaky, unfamiliar scrawl. Inside was a single piece of lined paper, torn from a notebook. The message was short, written in the same disguised, blocky letters. "An ungrateful daughter will pay a price. Family is forever." I dropped the note as if it were on fire. The disguised handwriting, the anonymous delivery, the vague but undeniable threat. It had my mother's fingerprints all over it. It was meant to scare me, to make me feel isolated and vulnerable. It did the opposite. It erased any last lingering shred of doubt. This wasn't a family I needed to set boundaries with. This was a family I needed to escape. The note pushed me to dig deeper. If they were willing to go this far, what else were they hiding? That night, I paid for an online public records search. I entered Tyler's name and date of birth. The results were immediate and sickening. A string of maxed-out credit cards, 2 default judgments from debt collectors, and the final, damning piece of the puzzle, a small claims court filing from a casino in Atlantic City for an unpaid marker of $5,000. This wasn't for Mason's college fund. This was a bailout for my brother's gambling problem. The next morning, I saw an email in my inbox with the subject line "Interview Request, Project Manager Position." The San Francisco company wanted to schedule a video call for Tuesday. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was happening. It was real. I booked a conference room at work for the afternoon, my hands shaking as I typed the meeting request. The interview was a surreal experience. I sat there, in my best blazer, smiling and talking about my 5-year career goals and my experience leading cross-functional teams, while my entire personal life was a smoldering ruin. But the conversation flowed easily. I knew my stuff. And the role was a perfect fit. I ended the call feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in a week. I left the office that evening feeling exhausted but cautiously optimistic. As I walked through the near-empty company parking lot, a car's headlights flashed, momentarily blinding me. A dark sedan pulled out of a parking space and blocked my path. The driver's side door opened. It was my father. He got out and walked towards me, his face a mask of cold disappointment. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I felt trapped between him and my own car. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and devoid of any warmth. "You've been avoiding your mother. You've upset your entire family." "I've been busy, Dad." "Don't lie to me." "Catherine," he snapped, his voice sharp. "This childish silent treatment ends now. You will be at the bank on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock to sign those papers." He took a step closer, his presence looming over me in the twilight. This isn't a request anymore. The air in the parking lot was cool and damp, thick with the smell of asphalt and the distant rumble of evening traffic. My father stood before me, a solid, unmovable silhouette against the orange glow of the streetlights. His shadow stretched long and distorted, reaching all the way to my feet. For a moment, I was a child again, small and powerless, caught in the path of his quiet, unyielding disappointment. But the fear was different now. It was no longer the desperate fear of a child seeking approval. It was the cold, pragmatic fear of a cornered animal seeking an escape route. "This isn't a request anymore," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. I tightened my grip on my car keys, the metal biting into my palm. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. But my voice, when it came out, was steady, colder than I expected. "I have to go. Dad, I have a lot of work to do tonight." I made a move to step around him, but he shifted his body, subtly blocking my path again. "Thursday at 10, he said. It wasn't a reminder. It was a command. "Your mother is a wreck. This is tearing our family apart. Catherine." "Then maybe you should stop tearing at it," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His eyes narrowed. For a terrifying second, I thought he might grab my arm, might physically stop me. Instead, he just stared, his expression hardening into something I had never seen before, a look of utter dismissal. as if I were not his daughter, but a faulty piece of equipment that refused to perform its function. Finally, he stepped aside. "Don't make a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life," he said as I quickly unlocked my door and slid into the driver's seat. I didn't look at him as I started the engine and pulled out of the parking space. I could feel his eyes on me the entire way until I turned onto the main road and he was swallowed by the darkness in my rearview mirror. I drove home on autopilot, my mind a maelstrom of fear and adrenaline. The confrontation had solidified everything. There was no reasoning with them. There was no compromise. There was only escape. Back in the sanctuary of my apartment, I leaned against the closed door, my body trembling. I slid my laptop out of my bag and set it on the kitchen counter, my hands moving with a life of their own. I needed a distraction. Something. Anything. To focus on other than my father's cold eyes. I opened my email, intending to mindlessly delete spam, and then I saw it. An email had arrived just 20 minutes earlier. The subject line made my breath catch in my throat. Offer of employment, project manager, Innovatech SF. My hands shook so violently I could barely control the mouse to click it open. I read the first line, then read it again. Dear Catherine Parker, on behalf of Innovatech Solutions, I am delighted to extend to you an offer of employment. I sank onto a kitchen stool, the words blurring through a sudden film of tears. A salary 30% higher than my current one. A generous relocation package. A start date. Flexible. In 2 weeks. It wasn't a daydream anymore. It was a door. Wide open. At the end of a long, dark hallway. And in that moment, I didn't just decide to walk through it. I decided to run. The next hour was a blur of decisive, irreversible actions. My fear was gone, replaced by a surge of pure, focused adrenaline. This was my own project to manage, with the tightest deadline of my life. I accepted the job offer online, my heart pounding with each click. I booked a one-way flight to San Francisco for the next day, Wednesday. A full 24 hours before my scheduled execution at the bank, I found a long-stay hotel near my new office and booked a room for 2 weeks. I went online and scheduled a pickup with a long-distance moving service for that very night, between 9 and 11 p.m. For 5 boxes. Just 5 boxes. That was all I was taking. Then, my phone rang. It was Tyler. The final confrontation. I took a deep breath, the air tasting of freedom, and answered, "Heard Dad paid you a visit." He started, without any preamble. His voice was smug. "So? We're all good for Thursday, right?" "No. Tyler, we're not." The smugness in his voice vanished, replaced by a familiar, petulant anger. "What the hell does that mean, after everything, Catherine? I am warning you. Do not do this to me. Do not do this to my family." "Your family," I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "You mean your enablers, the people who have spent your entire life cleaning up your messes, is that what a family is to you? Tyler, a cleanup crew." "You have no idea what you're talking about," he sputtered, his voice rising. "You're selfish. You've always been selfish. Sitting on your high horse with your good job and your savings, looking down on the rest of us." "My high horse," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I built this horse, Tyler, brick by brick. While you were busy taking everything that was handed to you and setting it on fire, this conversation is over." "It is not over," he screamed into the phone. "You are going to be at that bank on Thursday. Or so help me God. I will make you regret it." "No, "I won't," I said calmly. "And here's a piece of free advice. When you gamble with money you don't have, you eventually have to pay the price. Goodbye, Tyler." I hung up. And then, with a feeling of profound finality, I blocked his number. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked my father's number. The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. Then I started packing. It was a strange, cleansing ritual. I pulled my 2 largest suitcases from the back of the closet and opened them on my bed. I sorted through my life. Not by what I wanted, but by who I wanted to be. In one pile went the clothes and books and things that were truly mine. In another went the ghosts of their expectations. The itchy wool sweater my mother gave me every Christmas, always in a color I hated. The expensive, ugly vase they'd insisted I display in my living room. The framed photos of family gatherings where my smile never quite reached my eyes. I left them all. I packed my worn-out college textbooks, the source of my freedom. I packed the tarnished silver medal from the state science fair, a reminder that I had always been enough on my own. I carefully wrapped a framed, faded photo of Grandma Rose, her wise eyes smiling out at me. These were the things that had built me. These were the things I would take. As I was taping up the 3rd box, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My stomach lurched, thinking it was one of them, using a different phone. But the message wasn't angry. "This is Jessica. I don't know what's going on, but I saw Tyler after he got off the phone with you. He's losing control. Please be careful. I just wanted to say that." A wave of surprise and a strange sort of pity washed over me. She was trapped, too, in her own way. I typed back a simple reply. "Thank you. I will be." It was a small crack of light in the darkness. The knowledge that I wasn't entirely alone in seeing the truth. At 9:30, just as I was taping the final box shut, my doorbell buzzed. My heart leaped into my throat. The moving service. They were early. I buzzed them in. A flicker of panic rising. What if a neighbor saw? What if they made noise? 2 men in uniforms were efficient and quiet, taking the 5 boxes that represented the entire portable summary of my life. As they left, my apartment felt cavernously empty. A hollowed-out shell. The final steps were digital. I drafted a short, professional resignation letter to my boss. I explained that due to a sudden and serious family emergency, I was resigning my position, effective immediately. I apologized for the abrupt departure. I scheduled the email to be sent at 8 a.m. the next morning, long after I would be gone. I paid my rent and all my bills online, clearing my ledgers. The night before I left, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my empty living room with a single suitcase and my laptop bag. The only things left. The city lights glowed through my window. For 30 years, I had lived in the shadow of my family's expectations, a supporting character in the story of my golden child brother. Tomorrow, I was starting a new story, a story that was all my own. I left before dawn. The sky was a soft, bruised purple, the air still and cool. I left my keys on the counter for the landlord, along with a note. I walked out of the building, not looking back. The drive to the airport was quiet, the highway empty. Each mile I put between me and that town felt like a physical weight being lifted from my shoulders. On the plane, I had a window seat. I watched as the ground crew scurried below like ants, my old life shrinking with every second. As the engines roared to life and the plane began to accelerate down the runway, I braced myself. And then came the moment of liftoff. The rumbling gave way to a smooth, powerful ascent, and the force of it pressed me back into my seat. I looked down and watched as the grid of my city, the place of all my hurts and all my history, grew smaller and smaller, until it was nothing more than a pattern of distant lights. And for the first time, I felt a single, perfect tear roll down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness or of anger. It was a tear of pure, unadulterated relief. Hours later, the plane descended through a blanket of clouds into the bright California sunshine. As we touched down with a gentle bump at SFO, a feeling of profound peace settled over me. I had done it. I was free. I turned my phone on as we taxied to the gate, intending to call a car service. The moment it connected to the network, it began to vibrate uncontrollably. Affrontique. Buzzing Zeitcher in my hand. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications. A digital tidal wave of the life I had just escaped. 27. Missed calls mom. 19. Missed calls dad. 34. Missed calls Tyler. And a wall of text messages, each one more frantic than the last. Where are you? You missed the appointment, Catherine. This isn't funny. Call me now. The bank called. Where the hell are you? Answer your phone. And then, the final one, sent just 2 minutes ago from my mother, a message that made the peaceful California air turn cold and sharp in my lungs. Catherine Maria Parker. If you do not answer this phone in the next 5 minutes, we are calling the police and reporting you as a missing person. The phone in my hand felt less like a device and more like a live grenade. Its pin pulled. It vibrated with a furious, insist energy, a physical manifestation of the chaos I had just flown 3,000 miles to escape. On the screen, my family's panic played out in a cascading waterfall of missed calls and desperate, angry texts. And at the very bottom, my mother's final, desperate gambit, the threat of a missing person report. For a wild, heart-stopping moment, the old fear surged back. The instinct to comply, to call and smooth things over, to put out the fire they had started. But it was just a ghost. A muscle memory from a life I no longer lived. I looked out the small airplane window at the impossibly bright California sunshine glinting off the wing. I had not come this far only to be dragged back by a phantom limb. With a strange, deliberate calm, I pressed the power button on the side of the phone and held it down. The screen gave me the option to power off. I slid my finger across the glass. The screen went black. The buzzing stopped. The silence was absolute. I slipped the inert device into my bag, took a deep breath of the recycled cabin air, and waited for the cabin door to open. A portal to my new world. I spent that first day in a daze, moving from the airport to a temporary hotel in a blur of motion. The city was a vibrant, overwhelming symphony of new sights and sounds. I bought a new SIM card with a new phone number. A small but significant act of severing the final tie. My old phone remained off. A dark relic in the bottom of my suitcase. I knew they would follow through on their threat. I was counting on it. The call came the next morning as I was drinking a cup of surprisingly good hotel coffee. It was from a local number. But I knew who it was. The San Francisco Police Department. I answered on the second ring. My voice even and calm. Hello. This is Catherine Parker. Ma'am. My name is Officer Davies. A tired, professional voice said on the other end. We've received a missing person report filed by your family in your hometown. They seem to be quite concerned. Can you confirm your identity and whereabouts for me? Of course. Officer, I said, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. My full name is Catherine Marie Parker. Date of birth is October 26th. 1995. I am not missing. I am safe and sound in my room at the Grand Hyatt on Stockton Street. I moved to San Francisco yesterday to start a new job. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The sound of a pen scratching on paper. I see, he said, his tone shifting subtly from concern to procedural annoyance. Your family seems to be under the impression that you disappeared without a word and may have been in some distress. That is incorrect, I said, keeping my voice level. I am a 30-year-old woman. I resigned from my previous job and moved here of my own volition. My family was aware of my decision to make a change in my life. I believe they are having a difficult time respecting my boundaries as an adult. I would be grateful if you could please inform them that I am safe, but that I am requesting no further contact from them. Filing a false police report is a serious offense. I could almost hear the officer nodding. Understood. Ms. Parker, I'm glad you're safe. We'll close the file on our end and will advise your family of the situation. You have a good day now. You too, officer. Thank you. I hung up the phone. A slow smile spread across my face. Checkmate. Now, it was time for the final move. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email I had drafted the night before I left. The subject line was simple, an explanation. It was addressed to a long list of recipients: my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, and a few of my parents' closest friends from church, the very people they had tried to use as their army. The body of the email was short and factual. I explained that I had been put under extreme and inappropriate pressure to co-sign a large loan for my brother, and that in the process, my privacy had been illegally violated. I stated that I had made the difficult but necessary decision to remove myself from a toxic and manipulative environment. I wished them all well and asked only for them to respect my decision and my privacy going forward. And then, I attached the evidence. Attachment 1, Group Chat, Screenshots, PDF. Attachment 2, IP, Address, Verification. PDF. Attachment 3, Public Records, Tyler's Depths. PDF. I stared at the screen for a full minute, my finger hovering over the mouse. This was the point of no return. This was the bomb. With a final, cleansing exhale, I clicked send. The first week was quiet. A deafening, roaring silence from the other side of the country. I used the time to find an apartment. A beautiful little studio with a bay window that looked out over the city. I started my new job, throwing myself into the work, grateful for the challenges and the camaraderie with my new colleagues. They were smart, respectful people who valued my opinion, not my credit score. The first crack in the silence came 10 days later. A text message to my new number. It's Jessica. Someone shared your email with me. I had no idea about the gambling. He told me it was a bridge loan for a new business. I've taken Mason to stay with my mother for a while. I hope you're okay. I typed back. I'm more than okay. I hope you and Mason will be, too. A profound sadness washed over me for her and my nephew, caught in the wreckage of my brother's lies. A few weeks after that, I got a long, rambling email from a cousin I'd always been close to. She told me my email had set off an earthquake. At first, no one believed it. They thought I was being dramatic, vindictive. But the screenshots were undeniable. The IP address verification was cold, hard proof, and the public records of Tyler's debts and the casino lawsuit had left everyone speechless. The carefully constructed facade of the perfect Parker family had been shattered in a single afternoon. She said my parents and Tyler had tried to do damage control, calling everyone and claiming I had fabricated the evidence. But the lies were too frantic. The story too inconsistent. My Aunt Carol, who had sent me the text about the prayer group, was now publicly feuding with my mother. The church elders had apparently had a quiet word with my father. They were isolated, left to stew in the truth they had tried so hard to conceal. 3 months passed. I was settling into my new life, making friends, exploring the city. I received a long, handwritten letter forwarded from my old address. It was from my mother. It was 12 pages of self-pity, blaming her actions on her fierce love for my brother and her fear of seeing him fail. It was full of phrases like, "I don't know what I did to make you hate us so much, and I just wanted my family to be whole." My name was on the page, but the letter wasn't about me. It was about her. I read the first 2 pages and threw the rest in the recycling bin. A week later, a text came from my father. "I'm sorry for how things turned out." That was it. No ownership. No real apology. Just a weak, passive statement of regret. I deleted it without a second thought. The real closure came 6 months after I'd left. Jessica called me. She had filed for divorce. She was working full-time and had gotten a small apartment for herself and Mason. She asked if, sometime, they could come visit. Tyler was facing foreclosure on his house. She said. My parents had refused to help. Their own finances stretched to the limit from years of secretly bailing him out. When Jessica and Mason came to visit, it was surprisingly easy. We walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, the wind whipping our hair. We ate ice cream at Girardelli Square. Mason, now 9, was a bright, funny kid who looked at me with open curiosity, not the confused resentment I had feared. Before they left, I took Jessica aside and handed her a bank slip. I opened a custodial savings account for Mason. I told her quietly, the same amount they asked me for. Plus interest. It's for his education, or whatever he needs when he's older. Only you and he can touch it. There are no strings attached. Tears welled in her eyes. She hugged me tightly. After everything they did, "Catherine, why?" Because none of this was his fault. I said, and unlike them, I actually do care about his future. It was an act of generosity, not obligation. It was my choice. My terms, that was the difference. My new life is quiet, and it is my own. I have friends who I can laugh with over dinner, colleagues who respect my work and my boundaries. Sometimes, on a clear evening, I sit by my bay window with a cup of tea and look out at the city lights twinkling across the water. The anger is gone, replaced by a deep, abiding peace. I think of my Grandma Rose, and the seeds of independence she planted in me so long ago. She taught me that my life was mine to build. I had finally finished the foundation. The view was beautiful.